Are you saying that the Klan is a secret society?
It's a very advanced secret society. That's the reason why we can't draw the parallel, because we always have these rednecks etched in our mind. And as a result, we don't understand that the secret society has its origin in the Moorish system. As a matter of fact, the actual outfits that the Klan wear. I'm not talking about the ones where you see somebody cut some holes in some sheets, but I'm talking about the real Grand Master outfits, and the ones that's really done up with, you know, with the actual cross and the robe with the cape and the pine cone hat. That's all Egyptian initiation outfits brought up into Europe by the Moors.
So we're talking about 1400 AD. Okay, now read that entire page. It's very significant. First of all, tell them who the chapter is, the author of the chapter, and what the heading of the chapter is.
The heading is The Moors and Portugal's Global Expansion.
Okay, go ahead.
By Edward Scobie.
Right.
That ancestry to which Leo Africanus was referring is African. European scholars in the past 500 years have been deliberately dishonest in their writings about Africa. There are innumerable instances, much too numerous to catalog in this work, of this dishonesty. However, we cannot ignore the fact that certain Western scholars have claimed that the Moors belong to every other race except African. As a result, much confusion has been spread around the word Moor. This study is not intended to prolong the discussion about who the Moors were or who they were not. Scholars who are not blinded by the fog of racism are of one voice that most of the Moors were Africoid in origin. Even many of the marauding Arabs who crossed the desert sands of Arabia and swept down with their Islamic fervor northern regions of Africa, then crossing the Sahara and moving further southward. Massive miscegenation did alter the picture, producing people who were of all shades, from jet black to very near white. Dr. Chancellor Williams hits the nail on the head once and for all when he asks and answers the question. Now again, just who were the Moors? The answer is very easy. The original Moors, like the original Egyptians, were black Africans. As amalgamations become more and more widespread, only the Berbers, Arabs, and coloreds in the Moroccan territories were called Moors, while the darkest and black-skinned Africans were called blackamoors. Eventually, black was dropped from the blackamoor. In North Africa and Morocco in particular, all Muslim Arabs, mixed breeds, and Berbers were readily regarded as Moors. The African blacks, having even this name taken from them, must contend for recognition as Moors.
Read that sentence again.
The African blacks, having had even this name taken from them, must contend for recognition as Moors.
All right, thank you very much.
Don't be fooled by the leaders, saying they black, taking yellow envelopes, weighing their stacks, sold you out to the lodge, and government corpses sacrifice their own to their pale god bosses. Don't be fooled by the leaders, saying they black, taking yellow envelopes, weighing their stacks, sold you out to the lodge, and government corpses sacrifice their own to their pale god bosses. Moors been telling, never to the point of yelling, like black power cowards slaving, never rebelling, backstabber, all talk, never killed a cracker, but killed their own like overseers for slave master.
Educated niggers.
Okay, in order to do this, we need to understand a little more about the Moors and the concept and that basically what was the divine plan. The Moors are nothing but a consortium of Camite Egyptians. For the people that don't know what Camite mean, or Kemet, or Camite, or Egyptian priesthood, mainly the temple of Kom-Ombo in Egypt, or Kemet, the temple of Isis, or Aset, the last temple of Isis, which was one of the last temples to be closed at Philae, as well as other Sufi orders in Arabia that have their origin in what is called Kushite Arabia, in which Moorish institutions. And they set up those particular things in those particular societies. So what are some of the sciences that basically the Moors brought? Well, we know of all the learning and all the stuff that the Afrocentric movement told you, all of the stuff that the Moors brought. But let's get into some of the esoteric traditions. Basically, when you go in those New Age stores and all that stuff that they got, the New Age stores is dealing with, is nothing but all of the stuff that they basically conserved from the Moorish science of all of the stuff that the secret societies had. And when you see all that stuff, they give it a new name, esoteric teachings, New Age, and all that stuff. All that is nothing but Moorish science that they basically became the custodians of, and now trying to fake as being white in these so-called New Age bookstores, or what they call occult bookstores. You see what I'm saying? That's all that stuff is. Just put a new name on it, and you thinking it's some white people shit. So your tarot cards, you see them, this fortune telling, the tarot, that was introduced by the Moors. From the tarot cards, you get the playing cards, introduced by the Moors. You see what I'm saying? All your divination systems, they got little stuff they throw down, little stones called runes, introduced by the Moors. The crystal ball, this is real deal stuff that works, divination, introduced by the Moors. Your incense, frankincense and myrrh, all that introduced by the Moors. Gunpowder, you thought it was China, it got its root in alchemy. It has its root in alchemy going back to Kemet, of the study of metals in and out the body, also introduced in Europe by the Moors, as well as your fire stick, which later on was a gun that they didn't have no use for, introduced by Moors. Spiritual music, the word music comes from the word muse.
What do you mean they didn't have any use for the fire stick?
Well, based on their nature. You know, they didn't conceive of this thing as being a weapon or something they want to kill people with. I guess they figured, white boy picked it up after them and used it. All we know is they invented the gun, the fire stick, and didn't use it. You see, and didn't use it. Music, classical music that we thought was a white, that's the Moors. Brought that up because the scales was invented in Egypt. It comes out of Hermetic science and ultimately out of alchemy. It is melanin put to scale.
You're talking about music.
Yes. The word muse is a Greek word for components inside of the melanin. These angelic beings called muse. You get the word music. Something that inspires you. Melanin inspires you. This is all coming from the Hermetic teachings or the teachings of Tahuti. Because Hermes is Tahuti in Egypt, which is the teachings of alchemy, which is the study of melanin, the dark night of the soul. And so music, which is the components of what's heard in the body put to scale, is introduced into Europe by the Moors, classical music. They call Beethoven the Moor of Russia. You see, some stuff called the Greater Key of Solomon, and some stuff called the Lesser Key of Solomon, which is these magical texts introduced into Europe by the Moors. One of the benefits of Moorish teaching was Nostradamus. His teacher was a Moor. There's a movie came out, Orion Pictures, Nostradamus, 1994 is when it came out.
And they're doing that even now. They steal from doctrine.
Exactly. What happened was the Cathars, which was a Gnostic, Moorish people that settled into, they settled France, they settled Ireland, and they went on up into Russia and on into Bosnia. And from 1991 to 96, they killed off that black element in Bosnia. Of the leftover Cathars. The Cathars of these Moors first also settled Ireland. So when they said it, what's his name, ran the snakes out of Ireland, he was running the snake people out of Ireland, St. Patrick's, the Moors.
Dreamy and drooling, falling for the fooling. Mental slaves sell out or get bought out for cooning. Being your example to follow with no strain. Meant means mind, so govern and entertain is more than you imagine. Carbon is melanin, Quran and Bible angels are cherubim and seraphim. Riding on the light angles, traveling at warp speed. We created crossbreeds, now we can't walk free. The mind is the plantation, everything is mental. Even filling your brother with lead like a pencil. Mercenaries with chalk use bodies as a stencil. If rival gangs won't stop you, barbed wire fence will. It could take more, but it might take less. Cursing your God on Job's, cash in the fake checks. Spending fake monopoly money, counterfeit at best. When you see something is wrong, you need to counter it best as you can. You don't need a magic wand or to click your heels twice to escape dreamland. Just use your mind. If you can't relate, you're living in an illusion, slave to the dream state. If you just heard about Drew Ali, don't think he's late. He brought nationality and link back to your East state. As Negro and black, we act like we can't see straight. Shake them by the shoulders, wake them from their dream state. If you just heard about Drew Ali, don't think he's late. He brought nationality and link back to your East state. As Negro and black, we act like we can't see straight. Shake them by their shoulders, wake them from their dream state. Invasion. Drew Ali, my water when the fire starts blazing. Running with the holy buckets, the Caucasian. While Asiatics daydreaming, mental stargazing. Not paying attention, but paying taxes and fines. Nas said the world is yours, he really meant mine. If I ruled the world, you wouldn't want to be black. You wouldn't want to be a deadbeat dad or be whacked for sure. You wouldn't want to be the dirty Moor leader, convicted and facing my firing squad either. You won't be put in a box, forget the cedar. Taking tires off cars at unexpired meters. If I ruled the world, dirty Moors would hate it. Find them with their wrists slit in bathrooms naked. Find them holding scimitar handles slumped over with suicide notes to Jehovah. If you just heard about Drew Ali, don't think he's late. He brought nationality and link back to your East state. As Negro and black, we act like we can't see straight. Shake them by the shoulders, wake them from their dream state. If you just heard about Drew Ali, don't think he's late. He brought nationality and link back to your East state. As Negro and black, we act like we can't see straight. Shake them by their shoulders, wake them from their dream state. Dream a little dream, wake up from the nightmare. Dream a big dream, live your life in fright, scared to change. When everything that grows must do such or stay stagnant. Living your life as a pageant, made up faces with eyeliner and makeup, created by the same ones you call racist. Wake up, allow their dignity and exercise patience. Don't shock them too hard with electrifying statements. Everything cloudy, mind acting rowdy, hypnotized by Pied Piper, signing rap ungodlies. Having so much influence, youths won't pull their pants up, looking like a jailbird, begging for some handcuffs. In a dream state, getting grands up for freedom. Fiat is a slave to banks, you better see him. No different than the people are slaves to brand names. Move from dream to reality, change the landscape. He started from the top, don't listen to your man Drake. Only till clan hates and Masonic handshakes don't work. Moors are back, do your homework and assignments. Realize Moorish is the science. If you just heard about Drew Ali, don't think he's late. He brought nationality and link back to your East state. As Negro and black, we act like we can't see straight. Shake them by the shoulders, wake them from their dream state. If you just heard about Drew Ali, don't think he's late. He brought nationality and link back to your East state. As Negro and black, we act like we can't see straight. Shake them by their shoulders, wake them from their dream state.
I want you to know that we are descendants from the ancient Moabites who inhabit the northwestern and southwestern shores. You know what I'm saying? Our ancient forefathers are the ones who inhabit the land called Mauritania, which would today be called the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. So what you need to do is you need to study your history. You need to study Denmark Vincent, Gabriel Prosser, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Marcus Garvey, Noble Drew Ali, and find out what these brothers was really about. Get into their minds, their mindset. Learn how to have a better perception of who you are and what your forefathers were. Once you are able to ascertain that knowledge, then you will be able to understand the diabolical nature of the people who have you in the predicament that you are presently in.
You can't tell anyone about it, she said? No, that's not what she's saying. She's saying that the government put in place a period called the period of indigenous people. And that started in 1992. And it ends in the year 2000. And a lot of people don't even know that because they only passed it, you know, to certain people. Now, the problem is the false promise of 40 acres and a mule was done before we populated to the point where if they gave us 40 acres, there'd be no more acreage. And they don't have that many mules. So what they do is, if you are a nation of people, not like I said last night, not when you say we're a nation of 5% or we're a nation of Islam, that's a religious nation that has nothing to do with setting up your government as Native Americans. You follow what I'm saying? So when you go before Washington that links into the international state, there's a government other than the government of this country, all right, where the League of Nations was set up. The League of Nations preceded the United Nations. And when the United Nations was set up, the League of Nations of countries that said, I just don't want to be a part of that. I'm not interested in trying to control everybody's mind. This is what the so-called New World Order is about, trying to get everybody in a state of, under one type of mentality. And we as Native Americans are not interested in your form of government. I respect your form of government for you, but it doesn't apply to me. For instance, if I was a Muslim, correct, born and raised a Muslim, how can I function in America properly if the Quran says I can have 4 wives and America says that's a violation of the law? If it tells me that I'm not allowed to use usury, which means I can't make a profit, how can I invest and survive when Islam tells me I can't make a profit? So it is wise for Muslims to live in Muslim countries where the Sharia, the fiqh, the laws that surround them work for them. So we as Native Americans, we have our own laws. We always have. And they came here where we were, your father, took our Constitution, thanks to the Iroquois who gave it to them, rewrote it, and butchered us up. I'll get to your question now, because I just want to show you the picture. So what happens is, when you become wise enough to stand up and rectify all of their errors, their greatest fear is you making this everybody's problem. They're not interested in everybody. But if the people in Louisiana, under the Empress of the Washita, petition and they get it, and the people of the Shoshone and the Seminole won't petition. They're in another whole world. They don't petition to nobody. They're still at war, right? The Shinnecock petitioned, and several other tribes petitioned, and they got it. It's the tribes that won't petition, and it's not a plea, and it's not a request. It's a statement that the whole world knows and recognizes. So they're basically saying, if you want your indigenousness, just don't go around putting signs up to wake up every dumb nigger, or every dumb Caucasian, or every dumb Latino, and tell them, today you can become nation. And they're all running here just because they don't want to pay tax, or just because, and they're mad at the government. I'm not mad at America. America's mine. How can I be mad at it? You know what I'm saying? And we've been made psychologically to get mad at the country as if, you know what I'm saying, we're mad at the people. The country is not a people. The country is made up of people. And when we go back and start doing some research, we find out that the oldest faces found here are the Olmecs. And at the root of Olmec is El Melech. Right? When they get into, you go back to the language that the people, when you say the word Moor, don't get Moorish Science Temple of America and Moroccan Moors mixed up with Morenos, a term that the Latins used to describe the Olmecs. You follow what I'm trying to say? So what she was saying is, you don't go around telling everybody, see, I'm a this, I'm a this, I'm a this, and you cause them to have to enact new laws. And they will put a law into effect knowing it's unconstitutional. You with me? Yeah. And then, after everybody adjusts to that law, then they'll come back in, remove it, and don't give it as much public as they did. For instance, the Brady Law is unconstitutional. The Constitution says you have the right to bear arms. It doesn't say you have the right to get an AK-47 and shoot people. It says you have a right to bear arms to protect your family.
So I'm just telling you from an intellectual perspective, you know what I'm saying, and an educational perspective, that you must at all times adhere to your ancient forefathers, adhere to your nationality. We are not Negroes, colored folks, black people, Ethiopian. What we are the descendants of the ancient Moabites. So therefore they make us Moorish Americans. The Honorable Noble Drew Ali, who came in 1913 AD from the state of North Carolina, he was born in 1886, he taught us that if I get my people to think, they would teach themselves. So you need to learn how to think. You know what I'm saying? Without a foe, a soldier never knows his strength. A wise man once said, he said, if you want to hide the wisdom of man, he said, where would you hide it? It was three wise men. One said, well, we can hide it in the ocean. He said, no, man would one day get a submarine and he would go to the bottom of the ocean. One said we could hide it in the sky. He said one day man would have rockets and spaceships and he would eventually find it there. But he said, the wisest of all said, hide it within himself. They never seek to find wisdom within himself. And that's where you need to find the wisdom within yourself, young man.
It's the second time Jacqueline Johnson cried next to her son Kendrick's grave. The first time he was being lowered into the ground. This time he's being pulled out of it.
Did you ever expect you'd have to exhume his body?
No, I didn't expect to have to bury his body.
In June, Kendrick's body was sent to Florida. The Johnsons hired Dr. Bill Anderson to conduct an independent second autopsy. In that autopsy, Anderson told the Johnsons he'd found evidence that Kendrick died as the result of a blow to the neck and not accidental asphyxia, after slipping into a rolled gym mat at school, as investigators in Georgia had said. But what Dr. Anderson did not find shocked them.
When we got the body for the second autopsy, that organs, the heart, lungs, liver, etc., were not with the body.
The brain?
The brain, they were all absent.
Every organ from the top of Kendrick's head to his pelvis gone, and his family had no idea.
We have been let down again. And when we buried Kendrick, we thought we was burying Kendrick, not half of Kendrick.
I'm not sure at this point who did not return the organs to the body, but I know when we got the body, the organs were not there.
So CNN contacted the two entities that had custody of Kendrick's body and access to his organs: the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, which conducted the first autopsy in January, and Harrington Funeral Home, which the Johnsons chose to embalm and prepare Kendrick's body for burial days later. A spokeswoman for the state tells CNN after its autopsy, the organs were placed in Johnson's body, the body was closed, then the body was released to the funeral home. State investigators say it's their normal practice, but what happened after his body arrived at the funeral home was anything but normal.
What was in the place of the organs?
Newspaper.
Newspaper.
Dr. Anderson showed me the pictures of Kendrick's body he'd taken during the second autopsy.
It's a Black Friday ad, JCPenney ad.
Yes.
Stuffing that newspaper in like he was a garbage can inside his body. It's unbelievable.
I'd imagine that that's a different kind of pain.
Yep.
Why do you think that there would be newspaper stuffed in your child?
I never heard of that before. Never.
Neither had the founder of a national embalming academy contacted by CNN, who said it's not consistent with the standards of care in the industry, nor had the president of the National Association of Medical Examiners, who told CNN he's never heard of this practice.
Why would the funeral home discard his organs and stuff them with newspaper?
The question is, why did he tell us?
So what exactly did the Harrington Funeral Home do with Kendrick's organs? And why was he stuffed with old newspaper? We went to their office to find out, but their response to us? No comment. However, in a letter to the Johnsons' attorney, Harrington Funeral Home owner Antonio Harrington denies he received Kendrick's organs. He writes in part, his internal organs were destroyed through natural process and henceforth were discarded before the body was sent back to Valdosta. It's another disappointing answer for parents determined to know what happened to their son before and now after his death. And they admit they're struggling.
Unbearable, just about. Only thing that wakes you up in the morning is just to keep pushing.
Victor Blackwell joins us now. This is an unbelievable newspaper inside this young man's body. I understand there's an investigation into where Kendrick Johnson's organs went and why. What do we know about it?
Well, Anderson, we contacted the Georgia Secretary of State's office because they issued licenses to funeral homes. We wanted to check on the history of Harrington Funeral Home. And when we told them why we were calling, they decided that they too wanted to know where are Kendrick Johnson's organs, and they wanted to know more about this process, this practice of stuffing bodies with newspapers, something that they'd never heard of either.
How was the family's autopsy doctor able to determine the cause of death then?
Yeah, I asked him, if the organs aren't there, how can you determine how Kendrick died? Well, he says that essentially blunt force trauma was not in the organs. It was in the right side jaw, which was actually noted as bruised during the paramedics report on the day he was found. He dissected the jaw, which had not been dissected in the first autopsy, found bleeding under the skin. He dissected the left side as well, did not find the bleeding, and he concluded that that bruising indicated, also with the bleeding, that there was blunt force trauma, that Kendrick took that blow to the neck.
You know, Victor, one thing I hadn't noticed, and actually a viewer who works in gyms noticed and tweeted me about this the other day, was that it looks like all the mats are rolled really tightly, except for the one that Kendrick was found in. That seems to have had a large opening.
All right. And they get a little bit more for the heart. If you know this, like you said, number one, you don't argue with the private deputy knights for the popes of Rome under the Spanish Inquisition, who are not officers. They are private contractors for the insurance companies. Now, that's number one. Your response did not reflect that you knew that. That's number one. Number two, the first thing you ask for is their superior. You don't argue with them on the street because you know they're already charged to look for an excuse to make injury. Now, then you tell them, I have no problem, call the sheriff. That's what you're supposed to say. Even if it doesn't come, you get it on the record. Number two, you told me that this occurred to you twice, and you told me that these people in this community got this knowledge. All right, what did you do after that? Did you get the bond and the charter of those persons who stopped you? Why not? I see your eyebrows are wrinkled. Wait, stop. I'm asking you a question. No, I'm asking you a question. This is when you make the statement that we in this community know, and then your actions doesn't demonstrate that you know, because you would be familiar with what I'm saying with you, which means you've got pieces of study. You don't go out in the real world and put up a surgeon sign with rusty butter knives. No, listen to what I'm saying to you. This is not disrespecting the condition. It is not allowing the dismissal of these facts when you haven't studied. Because the protocols are the sheriff, not to debate with them. You don't even necessarily have to show them a nationality card. You ask for their bond, their charter, probable cause, you call the sheriff and stand mute. That's the protocol. Not only that, right now, if you're telling me about that experience and you're not telling me about the bond number and the charter to those persons, which means you're claimed to be in a knowledge position, and that certain things were exercised that they were not. So that's a knock. Let me finish. They do that anyway. They're entertaining the doctrine of discovery. You already know that. This is why you don't do anything to provoke them. Because you know that they're operating on the doctrine of discovery.
Say that then.
You don't even need to say it. You already know it. Your protocols is probable cause, bond and charter, call the sheriff. You already know that. This is why you don't do anything to provoke them. Because you know that they're operating on the doctrine of discovery.
Say that then.
You don't even need to say it. You already know it. Your protocols is probable cause, bond and charter, call the sheriff. You already know that. This is why you don't do anything to provoke them. Because you know that they're operating on the doctrine of discovery.
Say that then.
You don't even need to say it. You already know it. Your protocols is probable cause, bond and charter, call the sheriff. No, I'm just saying. You ask. This is what's supposed to be taught. You don't even have to do that. Ask them for bond and charter, their superior, and the sheriff. That's it. Because you already know their job is to provoke. They're looking for kidneys and organs. They get kickbacks for that. Half of these people keep calling them officers, which they accept your offer at the moment, and they're not officers.
People in the black community, myself, often worry that we might be a victim of police brutality. So, as a public service, the Chris Rock Show proudly presents this educational video. Have you ever been face to face with a police officer and wondered, is he about to kick my ass? Well, wonder no more. If you follow these easy tips, you'll be fine. First, obey the law. Laws were made for a reason. Think of them as hints. You've heard people say, man, I wouldn't do that shit if I was you. Well, here's some of that shit. Carjacking, armed robbery, arson, selling drugs, buying drugs, stabbing, shooting. You know, you probably won't get your ass kicked if you just use common sense. If you jump a subway turnstile, you might just get off with a warning from the police. But if you jump a turnstile carrying a loaded gun and smoking a joint, then maybe you need your ass kicked. We all know what happened to Rodney King. But Rodney wouldn't have got his ass kicked if he had just followed this simple tip. When you see flashing police lights in your mirror, stop immediately. Everybody knows, if the police have to come and get you, they're bringing an ass kicking with them. Here's a no-brainer. If you're listening to loud rap music, turn that shit off. Blasting "fuck the police" while you're getting pulled over by the police is just ignorant. When an officer approaches your car, be polite.
Is there a problem, officer?
And stay in your car with your hands on the wheel.
What the fuck do you want, motherfucker?
Unless you want your ass kicked. Want to give a friend a ride? Not so fast. Your friend might be crazy. Now, before you let your friend in your car, ask them these questions. Do you have a gun? Do you have drugs? Do you have any warrants? And in case you do get pulled over by the cops,
License and registration, please.
remind your friend to do this one thing. Shut the fuck up.
Man, don't give him shit. What the fuck you want?
If you have to give a friend a ride, get a white friend. A white friend can be the difference between a ticket and a bullet in the ass. Here's a tip you should never forget. If your woman is mad at you, leave her at home. Because a mad woman will say anything.
He got weed! He got weed!
If your woman is mad at you, there's nothing she'd like to see more than you getting your ass kicked.
That's right! Kick his motherfucking ass! Let me tell you, shut up no more. Take his weed too! He got weed! He got weed!
Now let's review. Obey the law. Use common sense. Stop immediately. Turn that shit off. Be polite. Shut the fuck up. Get a white friend. And last but not least, don't ride with a mad woman. If you follow these simple pointers, you probably won't get your ass kicked by the police.
Meaning that please do not feed into the ignorant frenzy by implying that these communities know what they're supposed to do when their language indicates that they don't. Now, furthermore, Clearfield doctrine. The Clearfield doctrine is used by those who know.
Islam and greetings, Moors. I am Supreme L, and welcome to another episode of Pardon the Interjection, where we talk about and also produce literature that will help uplift fallen humanity. Today's topic and issue is the Clearfield doctrine. And this is for you family who gets into them tribunals and is forced into becoming a 14th Amendment status dead corporate person, i.e. chattel. Look up that word. It's a French word, chattel. Your beef. Here we go. Governments have descended to the level of mere private corporations. Supreme Court, Clearfield Doctrine. Supreme Court annotated statute, Clearfield Trust Company versus United States, 318 U.S. 363, 371, 1943. Whereas defined pursuant to Supreme Court annotated statute, Clearfield Trust versus United States, 318 U.S. 363, 371, 1942, governments descend to the level of mere private corporations and take on the characteristics of a mere private citizen, where private corporate commercial paper, Federal Reserve notes, dollars, i.e., and securities, checks, is concerned. For purposes of suit, such corporations and individuals are regarded as entities entirely separate from government. What the Clearfield Doctrine is saying is that when private commercial paper is used by corporate government, then government loses its sovereignty status and becomes no different than a mere private corporation. Let's read that again, family. What the Clearfield Doctrine is saying is that when private commercial paper is used by corporate government, then government loses its sovereignty status and becomes no different than a mere private corporation. As such, government then becomes bound by the rules and laws that govern private corporations, which means that if they intend to compel an individual to some specific performance based upon its corporate status or corporation rules, then the government, like any private corporation, must be the holder in due course of a contract or other commercial agreement between it and the one upon who demands for specific performances to be made. And further, the government must be willing to enter the contract or commercial agreement into evidence for trying to get the court to enforce its demands, called statutes. The case is very important because it is a 1942 case that was decided after the United States Corporation Company filed its certificate of incorporation in the state of Florida, July 15, 1925. And it was decided after the corporate government agreed to use the currency of the private corporation, the Federal Reserve. The private currency, the Federal Reserve note, is still in use today. And these are references. Once again, this has been another episode of Pardon the Interjection. Please stay tuned for next week's episode, where we're going to go into the Moorish National Constitution. Like I say, as always, family, don't believe me, go check it out for yourself. Islam, peace, and love forever, Moors.
You don't claim to know, you do what you know. Now, I think too often the word consciousness is thrown around too loosely without a qualification.
That's right.
You know, consciousness comes in degrees like anything else. And the other deal is what you call the Stockholm Syndrome. Because they have no remedy, they criticize the victims or those who are trying to bring remedy, while they've been catching the hell, and we've all been catching the hell all the time, as if they brought some remedy by saying don't stand for your rights because it'll get you messed up, which means be a punk. Don't stand for the truth. Don't stand. That's what they're saying. They're really saying don't stand for the truth because the truth will get you hurt. And I don't mind them saying that, but don't act like the truth is wrong. Do you understand? Just say I don't have no courage. And this is why we're losing so many generations, because we got a bunch of punks. As soon as they're out of a job for 3 months, they'll go in the army and go around the world killing women and children with all of their courage.
That look like them.
And kill each other on the street with all of their courage.
Yeah.
But criticize people who do paperwork to preserve them in law, recognized around the world that they have no courage for, so they want to criticize the truth as if we're making it up, like it's some Moorish thing. That's law. Universally. It's not a Moorish thing. Is that Moors are at the forefront of standing for principles that all of them should have been standing for all the time. And if they had been, maybe some of this stuff wouldn't be going on now. But what you have is that they're playing these club games and they look at themselves from a third-party perspective. Now let me finish this third grade lesson to you, good brother. Even the fact that they talk about their own bloodline from a third-party perspective, the Moors. That's like a Chinese who belong to the yellow guy club talking about, well, those Chinese is standing for national principles. They shouldn't be doing that because it gets you in trouble.
Those of you who've been around me know that I've now begun to go back to myself. Go back to that which I believe will sustain me and that which will help to purify me, and have begun to push back and ignore that which I had fallen back down to. More and more I am being guided to study more. If you are not grounded properly, then you are not going to pick up the correct vibrations from the universe and the cosmos. More and more I am being guided to study more. Or if we are trying to lift our brother or sister up, the way we do it is just as important as what we say. How we approach them is just as important. Huh? More and more I am being guided to study more. I have found since my days with the Nation of Islam and no longer being in the mosque, that I now draw from all of our spiritual expressions, and that I now have come to, as many of you have heard me say many times, while I was supreme captain or national spokesman or whatever in the Nation of Islam, that if it were not for Africa, if it were not for the original black man and black woman, there would be no Islam, no Christianity, no Judaism. None of the world's major religions, as Dr. Yosef Ben Yaakov, Dr. John Henry Clark, and others have taught us, would be in existence if there were no original black man and woman and no Africa. Africa, as it is called now. More and more I am being guided to study more. And I hope that the ancestors will guide me to touch on this Africa thing, to touch on Asiatic. Oh, they say, oh, you got to know what you're doing, boy. Because you know it's a whole lot of us in here. I understand, Moor. I'm a Moor. I understand that nationality is the order of the day.
Yes, it is. That's right.
I understand that. More and more I am being guided to study more. I can't say that I love you, that I care for you, that you are my sister, you are my brother, taking the prefix BR off and leaving other, that you are my other self. And I do not act morally and righteously toward you. I cannot do it. I make myself alive. More and more I am being guided to study more. Muslim. Are you a Muslim, Khalid? Yes, I am. But I'm a Moor. Islam. I'm a Moor. And got sense enough to know I'm a Moor. And ain't gonna never argue with you that I'm not a Moor. And wouldn't come in your house or come among you and say I'm a Moor if I didn't feel in my heart, in my mind, in my soul that I am. I would tell you, God damn it, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Ain't no more. So if I say it, I mean it. And if I mean it, generally, I say it. Are you a Muslim? Yes. But I know my roots. And I ain't Kunta Kinte.
Malcolm, are you prepared to go into the United Nations at this point and ask that charges be brought against the United States for its treatment of American Negroes?
Oh, yes. Please. I think you're right in my camera. The audience will have to be quiet. Yes, as I pointed out when I was during my traveling, that nations African nations and Asian nations and Latin American nations look very hypocritical when they stand up in the United Nations condemning the racist practices of South Africa and that which is practiced by Portugal and Angola, and saying nothing in the UN about the racist practices that are manifest every day against Negroes in this society. Even in South Africa, those Africans aren't faced with bayonets and aren't faced with police dogs. And when I was in Beirut, I saw a picture on the front page of a Negro being beaten in Tennessee, on the front page of the paper in Beirut. When I got to Cairo, I saw the same picture of a Negro being beaten in Tennessee. When I got to Lagos, I saw the same picture. So were these African nations knowing the brutality that is inflicted upon black people in this country, simply because those black people are trying to get what the Supreme Court said they were supposed to have 10 years ago? I would be not a man. If I was in a position to bring it in front of the United Nations and didn't do so, I wouldn't be a man.
Malcolm, do you intend to lead the charge in the United Nations?
Well, I find that to say you're going to lead something creates a lot of hostility, division, jealousy, and envy. I hope to work with any group of leaders or any group of organizations to do whatever is necessary to see that this problem is brought before the United Nations.
Have you had any commitment from any nations in Africa to support you in this move?
I would rather not say at this time, But one thing I found in my travels, all of them look upon us as their long-lost brother.
You realize the implication is that you have had such commitments when you say...
This is your interpretation of what I said.
I know we all would be, but we need to. That's what we need to recognize: the fact that we're confused.
The thing was back in the day when people was being raped by white people.
But they wasn't white people.
See, even now, pay attention to the language. All of our language, culture is in the language. The statements are indicative of the misinformation. You're still calling Europeans white people when you're white. We went to law, showed you, right? The people are confused. They think races are real in the sense that they're presented. Race is the human species. The human species is divided or expanded families that are called nations and nationalities all across the planet. The language, the responses indicate the misinformation that needs to be fixed, which is why you're here in the Moorish Science Temple of America. Also showing that we're creatures of habit. That even after hearing the truth, after we read it, you still are practicing the redundancy of the controlled dogmata and schismata taught by European colonists, which means we have to be purged. So that means the people need to learn the truth about their names, their nationality, and their divine creed, as well as correcting their language. When the people are not educated, you can confuse them. That's what it proves. It proves the confusion is because the people are miseducated, and that's what's being missed in your responses. Do you comprehend? This is why you must know the truth about your name and nationality, and also the free national government, the principles upon which this movement is made, because once you understand the principles, you can't be fooled no matter how they present it, because you understand the formula. Are we clear? That means if you know that America is a continent, north, central, and south, including the adjoining islands, you know there's no such thing as the American country. You know it's continents. When you're confused, you think America's a country. And soon as they see you fall for that kind of stuff, they already know you think Santa Claus is real. Exactly. Same principle. And that bunny rabbits lay chicken eggs on Easter. So they already know that you're miseducated. When they start calling you Negro, black, and colored, and Puerto Rican, they already know that you're miseducated if you don't know those names don't apply to us for real. Do you understand? Because when you know, you already know that the Americans are from north continent to the central to the south. They're all Americans. And if a European can come from Europe and make these brothers and sisters from the islands and the south and the north think they're different people, he's got them under control. That's called schismata and dogmata. Are we clear?
Slow.
So this movement is to clear those things up. It's indicative that we don't comprehend the formula. That's why we had the baby come up and we go right in the dictionary and show these people who think they're black and Africans are Moors. And for the brothers and sisters that think they're Puerto Ricans, that's Puerto Rican. They're Moors, Taino Moors. There's Taino. The Europeans came and wiped the islands out. And they used our women as sex slaves. So that makes us have different complexions, but we're the same people. When you forget your history, you get divided. That's called schismata. You must counter that with a consciousness and make sure that your babies don't continue to be the slaves for the popes of Rome.
One thing that I found in all of my travels was that all of the Africans, not only Africans but the Asians and the Muslims, look upon us as their long-lost brothers. And America had actually tricked many of them into a hands-off policy by giving them the impression that she was honestly trying to do something to solve the problem. My argument over there was designed to prove that it is impossible for the United States government to solve the race problem. It's impossible for a government which has 16 senatorial committees, over which 10 are chairmaned by Southern segregationists, and 20 congressional committees, over which 12 are chairmaned by Southern segregationists. This is a segregationist, racist government that's controlled by people from the South. They can't solve the race problem.
Do you intend to take any part in the political campaign this fall?
We intend to take part in everything that will get results at eliminating the injustices that our people are confronted with in this country. Politically, economically, anything. Please don't do that applauding.
Another question that may seem a little silly, but it's the question of the names. I think a lot of people are confused by the new Arabic name, El Hajj Malik El Shabazz.
This is always, I've always had the name on my passport, Malik El Shabazz, I only used it in the Muslim world. Well, Hajj is a title that is given to any Muslim who makes the pilgrimage to Mecca during the official Hajj season.
Well, will you now use Shabazz and drop X?
I'll probably continue to use Malcolm X and I'll probably use it as long as the situation that produced it exists.
You don't feel that Shabazz takes the place of X?
My going to Mecca and going into the Muslim world, into the African world, and being recognized and accepted as a Muslim and as a brother may solve the problem for me personally. But I personally feel that my personal problem is never solved as long as the problem is not solved for all of our people in this country. So I remain Malcolm X as long as there is a need to protest and struggle and fight against the injustices that our people are involved in this country.
When Cassius Clay was in Accra, he was quoted as saying some things that were not so friendly. Could you have anything to say about that?
I don't know anything about what he said. I'm always reluctant to believe what I read in the newspaper that one black man supposedly said about another black man. Well, and if I have anything at all to say about Cassius, I'll say it to him.
Well, it's just that he said people weren't listening to you anymore. Do you think that's true?
As I said, if I have anything to say about him, I'll say it to him. He's a person who listens. He talks and he listens.
Do you still consider him a friend?
Yes, I consider all of our people my friend. And usually those who act unfriendly are only reflecting the poison that someone else has put in them.
Just one other one, and that's, what are you going to do about the traffic ticket?
The traffic ticket?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to appear in court on it.
When?
I don't know. I had left, the lawyer was supposed to have appeared in court for me on the 19th of May, and from what I understand, he didn't, and it created a lot of controversy.
Yo, this is straight up for all them niggas out there who fronted on some bullshit in the beginning. Fuck that. I ain't chic, I ain't chic, I ain't chic. I ain't chic, I ain't chic, I ain't chic.
On the real, all these dirty Moors. On the real, all these dirty Moors know the deal. On the real, all these dirty Moors know the deal. When we start the revolution, all they probably do is squeal. On the real, all these dirty Moors know the deal. When we start the revolution, all they probably do is squeal. On the real, all these dirty Moors know the deal. When the truth gets revealed, all they probably do is squeal. On the real, all these dirty Moors know the deal. On the real, on the real. When I uplift the fallen humans from the ashes, the phoenix will rise and live on after it clashes. Feathers and head wraps, costume ball sashes. Atlantis on Pangea was us ruling the atlas. The mundane, some god and unbrain. Blue Dawn is reincarnate, some self-proclaimed. Taking the lessons from Quran questions. Bible as my rolling pad, holy book circle 7. Brother Marcus Garvey coming in the whirlwind. Moorish Bobo Muftis in the black turban. Pioneer exposed as the triple crown glows. Every negus has the negus as his throne. The temple as the body. Truth as my shoddy. With no bulge, I'm still armed without the robbery. Master arts martial, and they marshal the law. Peace offers abuse authority, fracture your jaw. Clapping at y'all at bachelor parties. Not knowing whether it's controlled by HAARP. Stopping the tapping of UH frequency. Sent to the higher self from Sirius B. Or maybe Sirius A. The reverse is serious internet radio play. Like square shreddies are now diamond and new. Misleading, they charge a bill 50 for a shoe. It takes 5
dripping milk in the honey, doing triple black, boom, touchdown. Traveling on planet Earth where we crush clowns, while I'm managing this curse and preparing the elixir that turns copycats into kitty litter. These poor pussies pretending to be misters. I cannot sin, but I can be very sinister. My limitations are limited as I do a lap around the galaxy. Had to gather light and rally back and fuck the fallacy. And cause of that, I got labeled the antagonist. And it didn't help that I cuss and bun cannabis and bun candles and wear symbols of Orishas. And I put a hex on the heads of 7 preachers with one trailer spit aimed at the pulpit. Crush the crucifix, a whole tabernacle backflip. I'm not Catholic, but if I choose my bare resonance, you may just catch a glimpse of Lucifer's semblance. Up and down Jacob's ladder with my melanin, the vessel of no fear none. You can find the devil in.
Alright, so let's pull the libations. On the Kumu. Olensu. Shumala. Okija. Chiaja. Cheoa. Alcala. Locayo. Kakomo. Lalila. I need some Halara shades. Issa. Manu. Noku. Mana. Imatu. Tuki. Juba. Juba. Egati. Kasimbo. Nisala. Isala. Azilu. Pazuzu. Zupa. Nuret. Alconia. Ida. Io. Evelyn. Grandpa. Notoyo.
So it has right here in the dictionary, black moor. And it has the part of speech right under it. Next to it says noun. And it says a black person, man or woman, Negro. Then it has in italics, black in small case, plus, then it got Moor capitalized. There's identity right there in the dictionary. It was never even really hidden. You tell these people they're Moors, they say, what religion is that? They are so asleep. The sorcerers did a good job. And we're battling sorcerers. Of course, if we come out talking that way from the door, you'd think we're out to lunch. You understand? People, it's sort of like our arrogance, our poisonous and toxic self-righteousness has cursed us for quite a few generations. We got to fix it.
Let them know. Islam. Let them know. Let them know. Moorish MC order, I'm a round table sheiks. 7 days in a circle and 52 weeks. Dirty Moors copycat and bite the prophet's speech. I'm El without taking a Hajj like Malik. In a group of solo like Raphael Sadiq. Walking over rappers like stepping over a creek. Exposing you dappers, dressing like Greeks. Showing off cheeks, thong wearing whale freaks. Suck like a leech, I'm the nerd you kick sand on at the beach. Verbally your face I stand on, back to teach. Learn a lesson as the piano soothes your mood. Lyrical weed, beat brain food, you turn God. Applying what I speak, the truth, they burn and lie through their teeth. Denationalized, jack for all your supplies and knowledge from the high priest on the mental highs. Bringing you light, giving you sight, close your eyes to pray. Get shackled at night, now they're giving you trite. Tales of ox, feed of pigs and soup. You've been bamboozled, tricked, had and duped. Won't fight your own fight, but you join their troops. Killing others around the world just to stay out the noose. Won't fight your own fight, but you join their troops. Killing others around the world just to stay out the noose. Let them know. Use the mic to let them know. Let them know. What up, brother Hanif? Use the mic to let them know. This is like Jurassic. They got your birthright. Knowledge is light. They calling you black and you're calling them white. Your name's Mikael and they calling you Mike. Earth shadow is the darkness, they calling it night. Sodom and Gomorrites are called gays and dykes. False education appears real, they calling it fright. Chic on this beat, you're calling it tight. Effects from the roach blunt, calling it heights. With a razor blade on my line, I'm cutting your kites. Rapping blood clot dummies, worry about scuffing the nights. Feminized in tight shirts, showing muscles and ice. Deals, got them acting like the three blind mice. Rhyming for nursery, laying clay for Andrew Dice. I'm pro, you're Joe, the beat is spike. Can't take my flow, you hope I ease it right. I keep it coming like food and ackee, peas and rice. No coleslaw, tonic roots, please, no Sprite. 5 cents for a bag, yo, I don't need it, alright. 65, 35, fam, no need to fight. Studio time paid with knowledge, time to leave the mic. Let them know. Use the mic to let them know. Let them know. Use the mic to let them know. The truth about nationality and birthright. Let them know.
Agenda to the T dot massive. Ready for the Gideon Babylon with my shit. We give them what they want so them won't come stash it. We're ready for tech back with things and lash it. Unified is the camp nationality your stamp. When we dealing with the land we talk attaching this man. So who the white man, who the black man? When the law was written by the brown hand. Inspiration from a universal realm. So they distort the realness and tape the film. Keeping world under lock and key. Yo, cameras everywhere watching me. Check it, claim a right to be who I am. Public notice from seas to the land. Who's ready to stand? I am impropia persona. To hell with the fiat and the fake money launderers. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. It's time for the people to wake to injustices. Under contract, mind for combat. Natural law enemies got to fall back. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. It's time for the people to wake to injustices. Under contract, mind for combat. Natural law enemies got to fall back.
Use the mic to let them know. Let them know. Operation Rapid Inquisition, moving through the fakeness, hip-hop matrix vision. Back again, in these bars, this is my prison. Walls of these pages with pen shanks I'm scribbling. No visits, lines on paper, concrete walls. My margin is my showers and my washroom stalls. End of the page is when I make parole. Force me to execute rappers, then throw me in the hole. So much soul, the MC, not confined. The elements of hip-hop today are not combined. Almost seeing the other side, gotta stay focused. Just gotta let that phone ring and don't lose focus. They can't try to hocus pocus. Send rapping jokers with handbags, Gucci purses and chokers. point and pentagram is on our flag. Green, but not for cream. That dirty Moors took to throw off the balance of the Grand Treasury books. Getting offers like high school ballers. Those that infiltrate are not Moors but robbers. Robbing the people blind, deaf, dumb, and crippled. They can't tear this up, not one drop or trickle. No matter how hard they try to perpetrate the fraud, dirty Moors always fall on their sword. The problem is we started thinking like the colonists. To know what you are, we started dropping it. The problem is we started thinking like the colonists. To know what you are, we started dropping it. The problem is we started thinking like the colonists. To know what you are, we started dropping it. The problem is we started thinking like the colonists. To know what you are, we started dropping it. Me not play with no so simmer and easy. From 19 how long me see it's sleazy. So sick it's measly and disgusting. Everyone stood there. The Moors did nothing when Drew was attacked. They took the covenant that they will protect him and have his back. Behind on dues by 4 months. Going to kangaroo courts to perform stunts. Temples versus temples. Lawsuits from inner fights. Not doing their job. 3,500 for birthright. Mufti Force left the post to be in Gucci stores. We gotta thank Allah for the Sufi Moors and Buddhist Nagas. Moorish mic renaissance, not rap sagas. Confusion clearer. MC battle scar wearer. Moorish nationality declarer. Straighten out the crooked ways. Rap conduct squarer. The problem is we started thinking like the colonists. To know what you are, we started dropping it. The problem is we started thinking like the colonists. To know what you are, we started dropping it. The problem is we started thinking like the colonists. To know what you are, we started dropping it. The problem is we started.
Hey yo, this is straight up for all them niggas out there who fronted on some bullshit in the beginning. Fuck that.
Slinging, playing the kingpin, killing your brother over Democrat, PC, and liberal colors, bringing grief to single mothers. Where thugs mingle, they in the line looking for lovers. Bail hearing in the morning, not going to funeral homes cause there's so much mourning. Won't rise early, 1 p.m. you're still snoring, hanging on blocks, mental slaves with rocks in pockets, big guns that shoot rockets at girls on the bus. If they ban nigga, they banning us. Their plan is up, so let's have a truce. All blocks link up, we need a truce. Blackout, that's my alarm clock a shot. Liquor sis holding niggas crack in a crotch. Blackout, that's my alarm clock a shot. Liquor you man got 2 hands with blocks. Always red eye with an evil scheming mind. Doing stupid things with his partners in crime. Blackout, that's my alarm clock a shot. Blackout, that's my alarm clock. Guns get you 5 to 10 years automatic. There's some good reasons to put down the automatic. Turn a man's bitch in jail, the thuggers get sexed. In the showers on some American History X. I know a bro, when it came out like Malcolm X. Stop drug selling and putting guns to people's melons. Who don't hear will feel. Troops wear foreheads when caps peel on the real. For blocks they don't own, put down the chrome and pistols. This isn't that hip-hop single for you to dance or prance to. Speaking too much truth you can't handle. Back to the point, stop the killing. Read some books, stop playing TV villains. Gaming to get a name and killing your own like Melon and Caveman. Think before you act. When you're going, you might not come back. Blackout, that's my alarm clock a shot. Little sis holding niggas crack in a crotch. Blackout, that's my alarm clock a shot. Liquor you man got 2 hands with blocks. Always red eye with an evil scheming mind. Doing stupid things with his partners in crime. Blackout, that's my alarm clock a shot. You can't help the world when you're playing around and race games saying you're black but you're really brown. Do it only for self.
feet hurt. Ashes to ashes, soon return to the earth. Stand for better and redirect the worst. Drop some knowledge on a dime beat to quench your thirst. Thanks to sus, we've remained in the game with a torch high. I ain't checking up another track, don't ask for a while. It's time to feed a rapper to the fire, kick and scream. The same way a spirit does when you steal a dream. The more we want for self, the less there is for us and we. Minimal I, and let's build a community. The temperature rise now, the ice age melts away. Prophesize by KRS-One, these are the times and days. This is a cycle that I missed cause I was too young to jump in. Now I got enough artillery to keep dumping. Fire marshal, hold you in, let me show you something. Duck for cover, shells can't stop flying, stagger like you're drunken. We got aces round here, so keep the ones flunking. Bitch slap a whack rapper like you need some bunking. Hochi Kutcher, fucking call me Simon Butcher. Commercial rapper, decapitated envelope pusher. Rapper inquisitioner, feed him to the fire. Lead him to the heat, watch the flame raise higher. Picture painted, but the spirit not tainted. See us in a pheasant, fall back like it fainted. Feels like we've been here from the ancients. Experienced so much challenges to build my patience.
Moorish Master MC. General, torture a rapping dummy, wearing eyeshadow, piercing his tongue and tummy, piercing the lips and wearing gay earrings, king. One was bad, but now y'all are killing it, king. Some rappers taking it, some giving it, king. Just to have a whip in a mansion, be living it bling, living it artificial, acting like clones. When I hit you by text, I don't mean by phones. Moorish squad bomb rappers on tracks like drones. Like casual, I didn't mean to put bats to your domes. Splitting numbskulls, squashing pea brains, don't leave nails on fingers when I does it. Little chicken McNuggets, rapping meal toys. Got young gods clapping, leave you limp like steam back. Troy asking what's happened, like you didn't know or expect it. For talking that misleading trash on all your records. Moorish MC of the year, some say I'm a jerk. Around too much truth, and the feelings got hurt. You rapping early in verse on microphone masters. I don't give a fuck about none of y'all rap. Moorish MC of the year, some say I'm a jerk. Around too much truth, and your feelings got hurt. You rapping early in verse wearing skirts, I clap you cause I don't give a fuck about none of y'all rap. There's nothing you homo rappers do that surprise me. Rapper Inquisitor make you eat poison ivy. Trinbago hot sauce all in your eyes for burning. For not teaching on mics that from Masons they learning. Rap black Nazis and you're not even German. Rather rap heads with t-shirts than Moorish turbans. Turning Hero logos to American Eagles. Gold noose rope chains. Only songs about cocaine. Cough syrup and liquor mix you white DJs. Still stacks of vinyl crates if we play. Don't believe anything or follow what cheeks say. I study. Keep my album sides broken and some sides bloody. Burn rappers like crosses in front of your homes. Moorish Ku Klux Klan and stomping on lawn gnomes. Throwing hip-hop award bricks to rappers' windows. Most hip-hop songs are just commercial jingles. Moorish MC of the year, some say I'm a jerk. Around too much truth, and your feelings got hurt. You rapping early in verse on microphone masters. I don't give a fuck about none of y'all rap. Moorish MC of the year, some say I'm a jerk. Around too much truth, and your feelings got hurt. You rapping early in verse wearing skirts like clap your cuz. I don't give a fuck about none of y'all rap.
It's like full-blown war in the Gideon. Get it wrong, we coming full strong like the bit is on. Salute to the God Abaddon, who they know like Iron Sheep. Giving out the knowledge in the songs and in the streets to the ones that seek. Yes, the meek will inherit. It's true, fight no ferret. Turn up my speakers a little louder so you can hear it. Don't be fooled by my appearance, how you clearing. Clearing up the record. No, we ain't finished yet. Slaughterhouse for these dumb rappers who ain't been no thread. I'm dumping all your records to the curb. I'm bringing back the classics. Give me J. Rue, that brass tag shit. Bumping MOP and that boot camp click. I'm crushing all you candy rappers. And yo, if seeing is believing, I ain't sure that none of you harder than my breakfast, tea and crackers.
Moorish MC of the year, some say I'm a jerk. Around too much truth, and your feelings got hurt. You rapping early in verse on microphone masters. I don't give a fuck about none of y'all rap. Moorish MC of the year, some say I'm a jerk. Around too much truth, and your feelings got hurt. You rapping early in verse wearing skirts like clap your cuz. I don't give a fuck about none of y'all rap.
Dave.
The origins of the word Moor. Just let me give you some examples of the word Moor. There was a brother, or gentleman by the name of Richard Hakluyt. He was a traveler in the 1400s who reported that in the old times the people of Africa were called Ethiops or Moors or Morens, which means that the word Moor was used for anybody of dark complexion. Like Ethiop means land of burnt faces, Moors meant black. In Spanish, mora is blackberry. Moreno is dark complexion. Moreno also means sweetheart. Mira, morena. You know, when you say morena in Spanish, sometimes that means sweetheart. In French, moricard means dark skin. Morillon means black grape. In Italian, mora means Negro or Moorish female. Mora also means blackberry, which when you go to Spanish, mora means blackberry. And then you have moraiola, M-O-R-A-I-O-L-A, which means a black olive. So you have the derivation of the word Moor, so they can't get out of the concept of what the word meant. The word means black. But you see, when you're speaking English, English says that you can say what you want to because you control people's minds. So if you say it, it is.
I seek. When I speak, you can't talk unless spoken to. Most sound like records, broken to with no facts. Trust me, I'm not quoting you. Melanin beings do what they not supposed to, going against the biological makeup. Instead of shooting sun rays, guns they take up to go against tanks and carriers of aircraft. When I use air, the beast says no witchcraft. When I use fire, speak truth and shut up a liar. If I use earth, I'm calling on fam from the hollow core. When I use water, flow like a tsunami on y'all. Martin Luther told y'all non-violence. He was a warlock, Rosicrucian, candle magic in silence. Been on this continent, living in minus degrees and temp. In the plus is where my mind is. Open up your mind, iris. I said it's ISIS. Her son Heru is who the Christ is. Light of the world, watch me enlighten a nerd. In your stomach like the center, I frighten your turds. Give you the runs, heighten your blurs with tones and words. Talk the skyscrapers are killing the birds. I'm giving you nerves and my goosebumps tingle your spine. You're listening to Iron Sheik and thinking it's prime. The absolute oil's got me not stinking a dime. Can't check enough peeps house, man, it's stinking a swine. Many sell out for a deal and sign with ink on the line. Incarcerating your speech for fiat, cars and yachts. Drinking devil's liquids, Henny and yak. Rappers turn convicts, goddess turn bomb chicks. Niggas yelling fuck the police is nonsense. They got guns by the box and run your streets. Widow your so-called whore after they clap at your fro. Parole not, when caught, the gat didn't blow. I heard stories about men putting cock in a bro in the showers, or get guards to leave the watchtowers while the gang rape you in a bed of dead flowers. Thousands of brothers, they wore those briefs. Can't think how much semen is on those sheets. Most need to go in strong, not weak. Like my babe brothers, LeBron and Shakur Malik. It's not cool living in the jail cell. Rappers and MCs are liars and the truth they don't tell. Agents using examples of Larry Davis to have you shooting out with pigs from the basement to get caught and then become a killer replacement. Cops crooked like the eye brew, plus they lie too. Seeing is believing, believing is fake. They say fuck fruition and have blind faith. They take your collection, won't give it to God. They take your perception and they give it to God. Seeing is believing, believing is fake. They say fuck fruition and have blind faith. They take your collection, won't give it to God. They take your perception and they give it to God. Most don't learn till it's too late. Most say that they real but they too fake. Most act minor but think they too great. Most meet fate just cause they too bait. Most don't learn till it's too late. Most say that they real but they too fake. Most act minor but think they too great. Most meet fate just cause they too bait. Welcome to Scarborough. Youths want cash without tango. Candle magic got me calling on Shango. When I strike, I'm coming from lightning angles. Wet up in your rod like dangles. Know your place. When me and the God step into place, devils got step in their face. No matter your race, watch your speech. We defend peace with justice. Love for the God make you shit like mustard or run like custard. Too slow, so you know how it go. Send him to assault. I'm not the one to judge you, bro, or judge you, sis. Humanity written from hip to hip, but you're shaking them and not getting your womb equipped. Degrading yourself for women's rights, not saving yourself. Turning a dyke, but won't spiritually raise yourself. Waste of sperm, can't even wait to perm. Getting viruses and symptoms, you're thinking it's germs. Making so many mistakes, from none you learn. Seeing your future as the fucking cauldron turn. Ease the burn of your young son's death. blaming the influence, but never blaming yourself. Drive a shot, but never a crooked cop. Crip shot, but never a racist cop. Racism doesn't exist, so stop. Rex 84, King Alfred got him on the block for chopping. Nigga mortus, abuse ain't stopping. Guns on your shirts, but your pistol's not cocking. Popping and locking, guns jam for 10 you're locked in. Or eternal sleep in a closed coffin. Most don't learn till it's too late. Most say that they real, but they too fake. Most act minor, but think they too great. Most meet fake just cause they too bait. Most don't learn till it's too late. Most say that they real, but they too fake. Most act minor, but think they too great. Most meet fake just cause they too bait. In the name of Allah and Ali, Islam to all. Join the MST. You should hear about birthrights and nationality. For you are not Negroes or what you claim to be. In the name of Allah and Ali, Islam to all. Join the MST. You should hear about birthrights and nationality. For you are not Negroes or what you claim to be. Learn your foreparents' ancient divine creed. Learn your foreparents' ancient divine creed. Learn your foreparents' ancient divine creed. Since 1913 I've been planting the seeds. Enemies planted, agents, I had to leave. I know it was abrupt, but bear with me please. Among the many teaching, man have two selves. These are lower and higher. You want the one that justice breeds. Uplifting the Moors. Be yourself is what you need. Ancient forefather didn't salat on their knees. Not even under his own vine and fig trees. Fell to slavery for abandoning divine creeds. Denationalized since 1774. Now you hurt others with hands, tongues and thoughts. Confused at the roads when you see them cross. The object of Moor's life is to unfold of course. Islam doesn't teach we were born in sin. If unlimited capacities can be found within, humanity has been left at the mercy of those who in them have no mercy. If only Allah guides the Moorish movement, the faith in your prophet, please don't lose it. In the name of Allah and Ali, Islam to all. Join the MST. You should hear about birthrights and nationality. For you are not Negroes or what you claim to be. In the name of Allah and Ali, Islam to all. Join the MST. You should hear about birthrights and nationality. For you are not Negroes or what you claim to be. Coming as he did with a national message. Many disrespect and don't get the lessons. Following the speakers, not the words spoken. Connected to the higher powers, all wires broken. This is our prophet, and there's none left. False prophets point followers to the joys of death. Circle 7 says Jesus, but means Ben Yosef. Where you find Allah, we know the heart is closest. To find a real prophet in these days is rare. Most propagate a faith to have the people in fear. Together we stand, divided we fall. Prophet said study the Constitution, cause law is all divine and national principle specific. His call to all loyal and faithful Moors is specific. Most made our prophet suffer severely in the past, waving banners with the claims of a national flag. In the name of Allah and Ali, Islam to all. Join the MST. Iron Sheep about birthrights and nationality. You are not Negroes standing in front Zion gates. In the name of Allah and Ali, Islam to all. Gate guardsmen about birthrights and nationality. But you are not Negroes or what you claim to be. Zion Gate opener, Heaven's Gate guardsmen, repping for the one oak and henchman. Zion Gate opener, Heaven's Gate guardsmen, repping for the one oak and henchman. Zion Gate opener, Heaven's Gate guardsmen, repping for the one oak and henchman. Squadron. Mudras on stage to the crowd. I'm a marksman. Crosshair, your pioneer. My dress shoes are Clarks, man. No square front shoes. Rappers dressed like cowboys. In tight jeans like Aerosmith. My time's now, boy. Y'all been on the mic. Some of y'all fell off the stages. You got the ancients vexed, so they got me on your cases. Got me on the humble. But if you get it twisted, Kumo make you crash your car and blast you with spirits. No fear none. Ritualistics make rapping dummies. Limper, then some wet biscuits. Rise you like Bisquick. Your bank account doubles. For talking arms out and making youths get in trouble. You don't have to believe it. I call it as I see it. Call me Simon. The more carrying the cross for pale Jesus. Zion Gate opener. Heaven's Gate guardsman. Repping for the one open henchman out the squadron. Zion Gate opener. Heaven's Gate guardsman. Repping for the one open henchman out the squadron. Zion Gate opener. Heaven's Gate guardsman. Repping for the IHF and 2CMP squadron. Zion Gate opener. Heaven's Gate guardsman. Repping for the one open. Yo, handshake futures, give you bad karma, cancel karmic credit. If I put your name on it, you wish I never said it. You wish I just did it. You plotted and you schemed. I saw you visualize in the golden beam. Look through the stargate, a glimpse of the future made me see your judgment and tell the thugs not to shoot you. Medallions on string, thinking I'm a cheapskate. Fake Ross get locks cut off like Brutus beefcake. Fake Nuwapian get slapped with Dark Circle 7 and branded with Noble Drew Ali as a lesson. Zion Gate opener, Heaven's Gate guardsman, reppin' for the one oak and henchman of the squadron. Zion Gate opener, Heaven's Gate guardsman, reppin' for the one oak and henchman of the squadron. Zion Gate opener, Heaven's Gate guardsman, reppin' for the IHF and 2CFP squadron. Zion Gate opener, Heaven's Gate guardsman, reppin' for the one oak. MK Ultra, King Alfred, or X84. Once all melanites behind cage doors. In front of the idiot box, drinking cores, watching sports. At the picnic, first in line for porks. Can't find your mind, some say that it's lost. Moral science says divine souls got tossed, abandoned. Love is my ammo, peace is the cannon. Truth is the ayahuasca talking to the shaman. Freedom is the freedom, justice I must get. Tears fall like those shot with the pilgrims' muskets. The ruckus I bring, but this ain't Wu-Tang. Hold you accountable, Shimitar takes your 2 hands. Sent up the frankincense from Sudan. Big up to my elder and the god Moses holding up Muban. Rainbow flag rapping Fruity Loop 2 cans. Same company got cola in 2 cans. Different labels. You're navigating L is your navel. Make sure I cruise. Watch the goddess not cable. My property, now the rights of the archives papal. Ex-knights now sheiks of the round table. Ancients return to reclaim and learn how to not to succumb to the combustion burn. Astral projecting, as above, so below. So you know off the cosmos we're reflecting. Yo bro, laws of nature, make the sun hate you. Hybrid cockazoid, I'm all pro but not rapanoid. My deep mob, make devil's horns kebab. Don't get my Islam twisted with jihad. Don't get the Muslim mixed up with Muslims. Don't mistake the Mufti force for hoodlums. We giving back Islam and his story. Taking my story, creating a mystery. That's what's hidden. It's not called Satanism. Men thinking they're wise, but they lack wisdom. Need I say more? In my proper person, I got judges tearing up the bonds and cursing. I self-law a master. No guns, let God be whirlwind blast ya. No need for tabs, we got the fez. Rituals make them roll down the steps like the Aztec heads. I self-law a master. Let no guns, let God be whirlwind blast ya. No need for tabs, we got the fez. Rituals make them roll down steps like Aztec heads. Most say they're ready for consciousness, I doubt it. Application is the path, but some reroute it. The most I can say is, we'll see about it. Mother Nature sets fires and they can't out it. They take oaths, I know the truth, but they can't shout it. I plant the seed in your mind, got the highest sprouting. Just like Jack's beans, roll a stalk of sensi seed. Empty ashtray, hanging from the loose kente. Bobo beating on the djembe, calling Orishas. Or hailing Goddess Renan or the Negas. Red, black, green candles, golden flame. Make you think so much and end up with a swollen brain. Cause even she can see that he's in create her. The point creatress is the only creator. I self-law and master. My son now run, my birthright's a sovereign. God the macabre, around me revolving. X-Alpha or David Starr, I'm shooting at your squadron. Illuminate my higher self, see from afar. I'm so against jail, I can't rhyme in bars. Tell them I self-law and master. No guns, let God be whirlwind blast ya. No need for tabs, we got the fez. Rituals make them roll down the steps like the Aztec heads. I self-law and master. No guns, let God be whirlwind blast ya. No need for tabs, we got the fez. Rituals make them roll down steps like Aztec heads. 5 on the left, 2 on the right. Artist Union. Conscious. Artist Union. I self-law a master. Whirlwind blast ya. We got the feds. Aztec heads. I ain't chic.